A simple woman stepped into the opulent private jet lounge that morning, unnoticed by most, yet destined to be remembered by all. The lounge gleamed with polished marble, quiet luxury, and the aroma of freshly ground espresso. Designer luggage rested beside glossy shoes, while hushed voices filled the space with casual authority. Everyone fit in visibly. She did not. Her gray coat was minimalist but clearly well-made, tailored to fit without calling attention. Her leather shoes were simple, flat, and spotless. Slung over her shoulder was a structured dark leather backpack, unbranded, but anyone with a good eye could see its craftsmanship. Her hair was loosely tied back, neat in its imperfection. Her face was makeup-free, but her skin glowed with care. She looked like someone with priorities far beyond appearances, self-assured, quietly grounded. The receptionist glanced up, scanning her instantly. "Excuse me," she said, the tone polite but firm. "This lounge is for private jet passengers only." The woman smiled gently. "Yes, I'm aware. I have a flight booked under the name Ilara Monroe." A suited man raised an eyebrow. Nearby, a woman in heels and diamonds whispered something to her companion, prompting a soft laugh. Ilara stood calm, unmoved. She'd seen this before. The receptionist checked the screen. "I'm not seeing that name on the manifest. Are you sure you're in the right terminal?" "Yes," Ilara replied evenly. "I was told this is where I'm supposed to be." The man from earlier stepped forward. "Look, no offense, but this isn't a public airport," he said, clearly amused. "This lounge is for passengers, not walk-ins." Just then, a junior staff member leaned in and whispered something to the receptionist. She nodded, her tone sharpening. "Please wait outside while we verify your details." There it was. The polite dismissal. The quiet push toward the door. Ilara nodded once, said nothing, and turned to leave. As she walked past the windowed lounge, the man muttered, "Probably just wanted a glimpse of a celebrity jet." Outside, in the morning chill, Ilara took out her phone and calmly dialed. "Yes, I've arrived. Let the pilot know I'll be boarding shortly. And next time, I won't come in person." She stood just outside the private jet terminal, the cool breeze brushing against her coat. She didn't pace, didn't check her phone nervously. She waited with the composure of someone used to being underestimated, and used to proving people wrong. Inside, the lounge buzzed softly. But now the laughter had faded. In its place, murmurs. Glances toward the doors. The woman who'd just been dismissed. Was she still out there? The receptionist tapped at her screen again, heart quickening. Then she saw it. Monroe Ilara, listed under VIP priority clearance. Her face paled. Moments later, a black Mercedes Maybach pulled into view. Didn't honk. It didn't flash. It simply arrived. Graceful, deliberate. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, walked around the vehicle, and opened the rear passenger door with practiced elegance. "Ilara Monroe," he said with a gentle bow. "Yes," she replied and approached calmly. Inside, the suited man who'd mocked her earlier pressed closer to the window, eyebrows rising. "Wait, she has a driver." Then the doors of the lounge opened again, this time from inside. A tall man in a Navy pilot uniform stepped through. "Ms. Monroe." His voice was clear and warm. "Captain Jensen, I'm here to personally escort you. The crew is ready. We apologize for the inconvenience." Every conversation stopped. The receptionist stood up abruptly. "Ms. Monroe, I didn't realize." Ilara turned, graceful and composed. "No apology needed," she replied, calm as ever. Behind her, the chauffeur collected her bag with practiced ease. The suited man now looked pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but closed it again when he met her eyes. Ilara simply offered a small, knowing smile. "Have a pleasant morning," she said to no one in particular, and stepped into the car. As the doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, the lounge buzzed not with ridicule, but with stunned silence. But the moment didn't end there. Inside the lounge, whispers began to build again, not with mockery but confusion. Who was she? Someone mentioned the name again. Monroe. Rang a bell. Wasn't there an Ilara Monroe who owned one of the largest venture capital firms in the country? Daniel, the young staffer who had been observing quietly, began to piece it together. He remembered a news article about a woman named Ilara who had funded entire hospital wings anonymously. He stared out the window as the car disappeared down the private lane. In the car, Ilara sat quietly. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't check emails. She simply breathed in the silence, calm and centered. Her driver glanced at her through the mirror. "Everything all right, ma'am?" She smiled gently. "Yes. Everything is exactly as it should be." The Mercedes turned left, heading toward the tarmac, where a sleek jet waited, stairs lowered. The sky above was soft with early morning light, casting a golden glow across the runway. As they approached, Captain Jensen stood at attention beside the jet, saluting her with a smile. Ilara stepped out, the wind catching the edge of her coat. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking one last look at the terminal behind her, now far in the distance. Then, without a word, she climbed the steps with quiet elegance and disappeared into the cabin. The lounge, moments ago filled with whispers and arrogance, now sat in stunned silence. The door had closed behind the Maybach, but the weight of what had happened lingered like a heavy fog. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The receptionist remained standing, hands frozen above the keyboard. Her earlier confidence had dissolved. She felt exposed, judged, not by Ilara but by her own conscience. The man in the tailored suit sat back down slowly, face tight, eyes unfocused. He picked up his espresso but didn't drink it. His thoughts weren't on coffee anymore. They were stuck replaying the smirk he'd worn minutes ago, the words he'd said aloud. Now they sounded ridiculous in his own memory. Near the window, the woman in pearls broke the silence. "Ilara Monroe. She's not just some wealthy woman. She owns Monroe Capital. I read about her in Forbes." Someone else chimed in. "Didn't they fund that children's hospital downtown? And the clean energy grants in Kenya?" Another voice. "She's on the advisory board of half the tech startups in the valley." Details flowed in now. Facts they had known, names they had heard, but had failed to connect to the woman standing right in front of them. "She's the one who bought out that failing airline last year," someone added. "Saved over 2,000 jobs." The receptionist finally sat down. Her hands trembled slightly as she minimized the flight manifest screen. "And we made her wait outside," she whispered. Nobody responded. Shame doesn't need a conversation. Daniel, the junior staffer, stood at the edge of the lounge, eyes wide, expression unreadable. Unlike the others, he hadn't mocked her. In fact, he was the only one who had offered basic kindness. He now looked between them all, and then away. Silence returned. It wasn't the silence of politeness or disinterest. It was the silence of people being forced to look inward. The man in the suit finally stood up again, adjusted his cufflinks out of habit. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Maybe that's the point," the woman in pearls replied. "We never bother to know unless it comes in designer packaging." And with that, the room understood something it hadn't before. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks in wearing no makeup, carrying no logo. And it leaves a mark you can't ignore. Ilara didn't go straight to the aircraft. Instead, she asked the chauffeur to take her around the side of the terminal, to the private hangar, where the staff entrance led to the operations office. She had one small thing left to do. Inside, Daniel had just stepped away from the lounge. The weight of what had happened still sat heavy on his young shoulders. He wasn't sure whether to feel proud for treating her well, or embarrassed for not doing more. A knock came at the office door. A staff member peeked in. "Daniel, someone's asking for you." He stepped out hesitantly and found himself face to face with Ilara Monroe. She stood there exactly as before. No new outfit, no entourage. But now, the entire weight of her identity filled the space around her. She didn't need guards. Her presence was enough. "I wanted to thank you," she said softly. Daniel blinked. "Ma'am, it was nothing. I just thought you deserved to see the car." "You treated me like a person," she replied, "when others saw me as an inconvenience." "That's not nothing, Daniel. That's character." He lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry for how the others acted." "I'm not here to shame them," she said gently. "They did that themselves." There was a pause. She looked out the window, watching the plane's wing glint in the sunlight. "People assume I dress this way to make a point," she said quietly. "But the truth is, it keeps me connected. When you've had to build everything from the ground up, appearances lose their shine." Daniel nodded slowly. "It makes sense. Real people don't need to prove anything." A small smile touched her lips. "Exactly." She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a card. "If you ever consider a different path," she said, "we're always looking for people with your kind of values." Daniel took the card, stunned. "Monroe Capital." "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she said warmly. "Just keep being the kind of person you were before you knew who I was." She turned to go, then paused. "One more thing." Daniel looked up. "You have better instincts than you think. Don't let the noise around you bury that." And with that she walked away, quiet, poised, unshakable. The jet stairs folded up with a quiet hiss, the metal locking into place as the engines began their low, powerful hum. Ilara had boarded without fanfare, but her presence lingered like perfume, subtle, unforgettable. Inside the lounge everything felt quieter, not just in volume but in weight, as if the air itself had thickened with thought. Daniel walked back through the double doors, shoulders a bit more squared. His gaze not on the floor but ahead. Something in him had shifted, something permanent. The way people looked at him had changed too, though no one said it aloud. The receptionist sat still at her desk, eyes fixed on the now empty tarmac. She wasn't checking screens anymore. She was checking herself, replaying decisions, tones, expressions. The silence around her wasn't punishment. It was self-awareness. The man in the suit who had laughed before now sat slouched in his seat, stirring the same coffee he had ordered over an hour ago. Unfinished. Forgotten. He watched the clouds slowly roll past the window, as if trying to see something beyond them. Across the room, a staff member whispered, "She asked to see the intern." The receptionist nodded. "Yes," she thanked him. Offered him a card. The staffer blinked. "I didn't think she even noticed him." "She noticed everything," the receptionist said quietly. A few moments later, the lounge manager, Richard Mason, entered. His voice was measured, but there was a tension under it. "We'll be conducting an internal review," he said. "Our approach to guest reception will be restructured." No one protested. There was nothing to defend. Daniel took a seat at the edge of the room, still holding the card between his fingers. He turned it slowly, not looking at the name but what it represented. Respect. Character. Discernment. A notification pinged on the receptionist's screen, snapping her out of her thoughts. She closed the laptop slowly, looked around, then took a deep breath. The lounge would return to business, but it wouldn't feel quite the same. Outside, the jet climbed into the sky, its form cutting through clouds like a quiet force. Unshaken, undistracted, unapologetic. Inside the cabin, Ilara sat by the window. Her hands were folded in her lap, her eyes on the clouds. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Some people chase power. Others carry it. And as the world below grew smaller, a subtle peace settled in. Back in the lounge, Daniel stood and walked slowly to the window. The last glimpse of the jet's tail disappeared into the clouds. He tucked the card into his pocket, not as a keepsake but as a reminder. Sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from lectures or headlines. They come from witnessing quiet strength. The lounge lights flickered slightly as the morning routine resumed. But in a dozen subtle ways, everything had changed.